Mainframe. What the heck? Der Enterprise Transformation Podcast mit Heidi Schmidt von PKS, Tobias Leicher von IBM und immer wieder spannenden, wechselnden Gästen aus der Mainframe Community.
Hello everybody there. Guten Tag zusammen. Ich freue mich, heute beim 26. Enterprise Transformation Podcast ein ganz junges Mainframe-Talent begrüßen zu dürfen. Heute ist bei uns die Lella. Hi Lella. We are happy to have you here in our round. 16 years old and just IBM champion, and they are very well known in the IBM C community, I would say. And also, hello, Tobias. Thank you for joining me today for having this session with Lella.
Hello.
Hello. So excited to join you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have someone so young, because generally in our slots a lot of discussion is about age and how can we find young people, and now we have one that is 16 years old, which is quite a cool thing. So lucky to have you here.
Well, there you go.
So maybe, Lella, you can give us a few more informations, or our listeners, who you are and, what's your way to become here.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm Lella. As you mentioned, I'm 16 years old and I'm really creative and curious, to be honest. I have the fancy titles of being an IBM Z Global Student Hub Senator, and I was recently named the youngest IBM 2021 champion for IBM Z. And I just work on so many projects, all alongside my A-level studies, which all relate to tech for good, closing the digital divide, and inspiring more young people to take up a role in IBM Z, regardless of whether they see themselves as a hacker, a hustler, a hipster, or a humanitarian.
Okay, that sounds great. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how your journey was to come to IBM and then especially get introduced in this mainframe world.
Yeah, it's quite a long story. I think around the age of 8, I first kind of got to grips with the tech world. My parents were always armed with their laptops and would be working away at professional spreadsheets, PowerPoints, you name it. And being the naturally curious person that I am, sooner rather than later, I was comfortable playing around with a laptop, creating presentations for my parents on topics about my favourite suites or my favourite role models. And it got to the point where it was just as normal for me to be creating something in this digital world that I created as it was for my friends to be playing with Barbie dolls and the usual toys that 8-year-olds would be playing with. In terms of how I got to IBM, I used to live in Dubai, I think from about the age of 7, I think I was, sorry. And when I lived out there was this real kind of can-do environment, in the sense that they inspired you to not be defined by stereotypes or gender barriers or any other gaps that are prevalent in today's society, but rather do what you want to do. And whilst out there in Dubai, my parents helped me find an all-girls hackathon. I was 11 years old. The second youngest person was probably 21. And it was there that I remember creating my first application and meeting mentors and meeting industry experts. And I definitely did come back saying to my parents, gosh, it felt like I was at Disneyland. Everyone loved what I did and it was like the happiest place on earth. And it was from there that I continued to nurture the networks and the mentors that I met whilst at that hackathon in Dubai. And from there, I just continued to learn. I was put on stage at IBM Sales Academy in 2017 in front of all of IBM Middle East and Africa's sales reps. It was just such a surreal experience, and it really motivated me to see what I consider as tech beyond the textbooks. Instead of it being completely maths driven and data heavy, tech no longer defined me, but it allowed me to do what it is I wanted to do. I moved back to the UK a couple of years ago now, and I really just put tech to one side to really focus and prioritise on my GCSE exams, which unfortunately were cancelled due to the pandemic. But it's quite fortunate now in retrospect, because I had the opportunity to really reconnect with what it was I truly was passionate for. IBM Z I found by accident, really, having attended a webinar literally just hours before the exam announcement was made, where I frantically messaged my mentor, who's now my mentor, Melissa, who was speaking about purpose and passion in your career and not feeling like you need to fit into a certain technical box or do something a similar way to one technical person doing. And it really did just resonate with me. And it came at perfect timing, really, because now I've had the opportunity to lead so many initiatives with that similar kind of synergy underlying, all about finding purpose and finding passion in your career, finding time to do what you love. And yeah, it's just been so great. To go back to your question, in terms of IBM Z itself, as I mentioned, a real surprise, but I've always been eager to continue learning and not just letting the textbooks teach me, but also learn at a real-time pace. And the fact that IBM Z and their Mainframe offers the opportunity for you to learn at that real-time pace and use the same machines that the Fortune 500 companies use really did baffle me and made me so excited to keep learning. Realizing the power that IBM has had, whether it be supercomputing and fighting the pandemic or just being the day-to-day activities and transactions that it processes, I just think that it is this real superpower. And we often talk about when you grow up what you want to do, and I've always said change the world, and I really do think that IBM Z is almost that superpower and that superhero that does all of that.
That's a great statement. So maybe, Lella, you also can tell us a little bit about your IBM championship momentum, which you mentioned already. What have your other milestones been, and what's maybe the specialty in this champion program for you?
I think I mentioned I've always been naturally curious and keen to keep learning. I don't ever think that I will be settled and think that I've mastered any particular area of tech or anything in general, really. I like to just keep open-minded and continue learning. And being able to connect with the Champions Network has just been an absolute dream for someone curious like me, because although I am not anywhere near being an absolute expert of IBM Z, I'm actually surrounded by people who do that on a day-to-day and have real technical knowledge and a wealth of experience which they'll happily share with me. I feel like I've brought a really interesting edge of adopting the art of youth inclusion, what the future generation of mainframers will look like, and I've been able to really show that young people are interested in technology and tell the mainframers that I've met that this is really how you adopt the art of youth inclusion and the initiatives that we want to create. And that's really been underpinned in everything that I've done with IBM over the past maybe nearly 18 months now. The IBM Z Global Student Hub is probably the central thing that underpins all of the initiatives I've launched. From that, we've created hackathons such as the IBM Z Global Student Hub, the Human Code event, the Z for Good Ideathon, and Call for Code Beirut, where, before I was very curious and learning more about what Tech for Good was like, but the fact that I've now been able to link Tech for Good back to exactly what it is I want to know more about, Call for Code definitely being the main example of that. My father's Lebanese, so I had extra affinity to the initiative Call for Code Beirut Spot Challenge, which we created in response to the catastrophic explosion that happened last summer in Lebanon. And it was just truly wonderful to see developers come together, IBMers come together and really create a force to be reckoned with and launch a solution which is now being used at a real-time pace by NGOs in Lebanon. It was just so rewarding to feel like I've finally been able to use my skills, not only to help myself, but also to give back to others, whether that's students, whether that's industry leaders who I've shared my experience with, or also countries and wider communities who've actually benefited from our skills on like a humanitarian level.
Yeah, I think one thing that comes across when you talk is that you quite have a very diverse bunch of people in mind, and that other than maybe a lot of people think, especially the people that think about IBM Z. When they think about Z, they think it will just be the very old people that is interested in it, and actually no one really cares anymore. But I think you even made the point that you said working with IBM Z was what the top Fortune 500 companies work with, and I think that is an interesting perspective to say that it was attractive for you, not just because it was cool tech or because it was something that everyone hypes at the moment, but it was something that is important and that is really making a difference. So when we now talk about the diversity that you just explained to us that you see sometimes, how do you think can we actually also let's say just attract more people to the IBM Z platform to make also that IBM Z platform that today I think is not the most diverse platform on earth, even though we discussed that in previous podcasts, Heidi, that the start when IBM Z was actually initially used, a lot of women were in tech at that point in time, but it just changed over the years somehow. So I think it's a really cool thing to see that is changing again to a very diverse area. So how do you think we can make that work? How can we get people excited about IBM Z and especially young people?
For sure. I definitely think that we're on the right path with the creation of programs like the Z Ambassador program and student-led initiatives. I always speak about anything being created for us as young people should be created with us. So no decision about us without us, really. And that has definitely been evident through all of the initiatives that I've led and created. Whilst you acknowledge that maybe IBM Z perhaps isn't the most diverse at the moment, I definitely do have a lot of hope for the future, both cognitively and demographically. That my favourite factual book is actually Rebel Ideas by Matthew Side, and in that book he speaks about the power of so-called rebel ideas, where you make sure that at the decision-making table you have young people, you have whoever that person that your end user will be. So instead of making decisions about what you may think works for young people, based on your experience of being a young person 20, 30 years ago, you should rather listen to the young people of today living in this digital generation. So that's where the cognitive diversity ties into it. I also mentioned about the Champions Network and how we have people being champions for being advocates, for being leaders, for being experts, for being technical developers. And it's just so wonderful to see that cognitive diversity and just making sure that we are representative of wider society, and that if we want to promote diversity and inclusion, we need to consult those people who perhaps are underserved and underrepresented within the IBM Z community. As you spoke about Fortune 500 companies and being inspired by the fact that IBM Z is just so powerful, I really do think that that's purely down to how. So we speak about Fortune 500 companies and the power of the technology that we interact with. And I think that now more than ever, young people are becoming part of this change maker generation where we see issues in society. And I think that we are very, very responsive to them, unlike ever before, really. And the way that IBM Z and technology is so fast-paced and can really impact the lives of one another, it's only increasing the power that technology does have. So I think that the more we can nurture the art of youth inclusion by creating more opportunities for young people, the more diverse a workforce we'll have. And really, I do think that the Mainframe is in good hands with the people that I've been surrounded with over the past 18 months.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that the people that you work with, I think that this is kind of a special bunch, because that is something we discussed as well, I think, Heidi, that we said mainframers are sometimes special also in a way that it is sometimes a little bit more complicated to work with, but they are also very helpful. And I think that was something that you mentioned as well when we had a little chat up front.
For sure. I always am a strong believer that if you don't ask, you won't get. And perhaps it's not the most polite way to think about things, but I definitely do think that, particularly in relation to seeking professional opportunities and finding more to kind of pan out your future roadmap. It's so important that you reach out to these people. Being 16 years old has meant that, I don't think people do really want to say no to me because they feel bad. But also the people that I have had the opportunity to speak to are just so passionate and keen to see the mainframe being passed on to good hands that they wouldn't really say no. So I just think that it is so, so powerful to see such a great and knowledgeable workforce want to share their skills forward and, as I mentioned, ensure that the mainframe does live on. And it's just been so wonderful to really learn from the experts. Usually we learn from textbooks that are perhaps out of date the moment that they're published. But the fact that technology is forever evolving and the programs that I'm part of are like that too, it is just so, so wonderful and motivating to see.
Cool. Yeah, I think some of the people that actually listen to us maybe have that challenge that they have to motivate young people because they are maybe parents, they are maybe grandparents even. At least I know of some that are listening to us. So we are happy about that. So what would you think would be very important for them to help their children to actually get connected and really find their way in tech, even though maybe they don't think at first sight that tech could be something for them?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, the digital world has made opportunities so much more easy to access. We mentioned at the start of the podcast how I had my GCSE exams cancelled, and it left me thinking, gosh, how do I keep learning? I don't want to fall into an abyss of watching Netflix and scrolling on TikTok, but rather I wanted to continue learning, and I didn't want the fact that we were living through a pandemic to define me. And I think that the wealth of opportunities that have been out there and the opportunities I've been able to create have really shown me that the power that technology does have. I think for parents and educators, it's important that we don't just define technology as being this data-driven, maths-heavy subject, but rather we show young people that I think over 90% of jobs in the future are going to require these digital skills. So by having digital literacy and not considering computer science a separate subject from the rest of the subjects that we study at school, I think it's just so important that we really ensure that it is integrated within our society, within the discussions we have at home and the things that we get up to on the weekend, because it definitely is the future. And IBM said in particular, the initiatives that we've launched, such as the Student Hub, which is definitely the one-stop shop for all opportunities, it's really been powerful to start to show people that, you know, you can ask a question, you can have it answered. And we've been able to grow professionally, personally and academically as the hub. We've seen people go from having no knowledge about IBM Z to completing level 3 of Master the Mainframe and other student-led competitions. And it's just been so wonderful to uplift one another. And at a time when we were physically isolated, we were able to create a community which everyone was welcome to. So I definitely say take a look at the wealth of opportunities available online. Hackathons are, as Sherry, who is a mentor of mine and a great person who leads Call for Code, she said that hackathons are a penalty-free opportunity to continue to learn. And I think that that is so true. Often we define ourselves as people who have to succeed, and I'm definitely a perfectionist in the sense that when I'm trying to commit to my code, I'll think, oh, that's not right, maybe I shouldn't go ahead with it. But rather, if we just push ourselves to be brave and not perfect and seek all these opportunities, don't feel like we're defined by them. You can explore IBM Z, but trust me, I don't think that they're going to expect you to sign a contract and sign your life away to the mainframe, but rather it's just a way to keep learning and stay curious. So please support your children, support the young people around you, and help them realise that tech is the future, and regardless of whatever it is you're interested in, there's a place in the industry for you.
Very good points. Hopefully our listeners can pick up some of them and realize them. Yeah. So Lella, after this great career or great background with only being 16 years, how will your future maybe look like? What's your what you are aspiring to do next?
That is such a big question, and I don't think I'll ever really have the right answer to it. But I definitely am a strong believer that the careers of the future are yet to be defined, and I really hope that I'll be able to continue learning, be a lifelong learner, and I never think that I will have mastered a particular area of tech. I hope to continue experimenting in and beyond IBM Z, and by saying yes, I hope much more comes my way. I've started working with smaller companies and organisations who hold similar synergies and motivations to inspire more young people to get involved in technology, and I think I'll really start to spend more time there. Yeah, I attended a talk not so long ago, and I often reflect on this woman's quote, which she mentioned that particularly resonated with me. And she said, "Be disruptive of your well-made plans. Always ask why and seek uncomfortable excitement." So I really think I'll do just that.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Great, Lella.
No. It was just perfect. It keeps us a little bit real. So sometimes when people listen to us, they get a bit more of how we live, and that there is more about IBM Z than just that there's more of us than just IBM Z. So that was a totally nice thing to do.
Well, Pippin, my Bichon, says hello. He says hello.
Brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, I'm impressed. And as said, you're just 16 years old. So the question, what will come next, is an interesting one, because there will be so much things next, and there are so many opportunities. And I think it is great that you shared your attitude to it with us, and that you are very open also for this worldwide network that you just joined. And I think that is something that I wish for or that I hope a lot of young people will actually make the experience, because it is a subject maybe help you to get also this community and leads you to other paths that you never would have thought of. It is just the entry into a network, and that is I think a great thing that you just mentioned it.
Okay, yeah. So we are, I think, nearly at the end, talking about 22 minutes now. And now, Tobias, maybe we can go for the final step, like every session we are doing, and ask your wonderful end question.
Yeah, so Lella, there is a little bit of a surprise to you. We haven't told you up front. So we generally end these sessions with the question, what have you taken with you from the discussions that we have? What is the main point that you take away? And because we never tell our guests up front, they have to come up with something spontaneous. But to not let you completely stress out about it, we thought it is maybe good that we start with it. So I would let Heidi start with it, then I will take over, and then I will be very happy to give you the last statement of today. So Heidi, what is it you take away?
Yeah, so my takeaway, I think in general, Lella is totally impressing. I know that I know her based on the champion program I'm also in. But today, I think for me, it was very impressive that Lella mentioned that she made the experience that especially in the C community, no one ever says no to you. So this was something I think maybe that's special in our community, and maybe it's important to bring this more into a public understanding and knowledge. Tobias, what was your favorite takeaway for today?
I love the if you plan our future, make it with us, not about us. And I like that attitude, because I think as you mentioned, a lot of people have actually to bring something to the table, no matter if you finally decide on what was discussed, but at least if you have heard what people think. And I think that is a very good attitude that works not just with age, it works with everything. Not talk about something, talk with someone, or with whatever it is. So make this an attitude, I think is a very good thing to do. So thank you for that, Lella. What is it for you?
That's such a difficult question. Honestly, I thought the last one was hard enough. I think for me, it's been wonderful to speak here today and really just share my experience of being 16 years old, of being interested in IBM Z and just keen to learn at a real-time pace and see what the future industry and future workforce looks like. Adopting the art of youth inclusion, as you correctly mentioned, is so integral and really helping facilitate and keep people learning and inspired to see what tech looks like beyond the textbooks and really find their purpose and passion in a career in tech. I think it is just more important than anything.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you, both of you, for today's talk about Lella, a very young mainframe talent. Thank you for having you here, Lella. Thank you, Tobias, for joining this session with me. And yeah, as every time, thanks again for listening to us. And if you have further ideas or guests we should invite, or if you want yourself be a part of this podcast, just send us a note, contact us, and yeah, we will happy to talk also with you. And for me, I will say goodbye for this session and hand over to Tobias and Lella for also saying goodbye.
Thanks a lot, Heidi. It was a pleasure as usual, and Lella, especially with you, it was good fun. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, and you've made my podcast dreams a reality. I listen to podcasts more than I do music, so being able to be on one and bless people's sound waves, hopefully, is a real treat and made my day. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Mainframe. What the heck? Der Enterprise Transformation Podcast mit Heidi Schmidt von PKS, Tobias Leicher von IBM und immer wieder spannenden, wechselnden Gästen aus der Mainframe Community.